Welcome back. Today I wanted to talk about karma. Oh my goodness. Yogananda used to say, karma, karma, karma. All Americans talk about is karma. So let's dive into it and try and understand it. I want to shed some light on it from an NLP standpoint, neuro-linguistic programming. The NLP model of communication is really astonishing. So we can use that to understand what's really going on in the process of our own karma and others' karma. Try and take a look at that through a lens more clear. So let's get into it. So we actually have three words that were given to me yesterday about karma. So we have samskara, all right? So samskara are impressions. And what's going to make an impression is your memory, right? You're going to make an impression of what happened and you're going to store it away. Well, where does your unconscious mind store all of that? You probably know already, don't you? It's your timeline. Or maybe it's your timeline going this way. So your timeline is how your unconscious mind, your subconscious mind, stores time. It categorizes everything that you've ever experienced. So you know that you brushed your teeth on Tuesday, and then you brushed your teeth on Wednesday, and you took a shower each of those days. And so your subconscious organizes all of that and puts those either behind you or maybe to the left, however your timeline is organized. So if you want to come in contact with your subconscious structure of how you organize time, go ahead and point to the future. And then you might point in some kind of direction from you, right? And then go ahead and point to your past, and you might point some direction from you, right? And those 2 points, whichever way that you pointed, that's your timeline. And so I have videos on timeline therapy where I go through that a little more slowly, and you can get an idea of where your timeline is, and you can float up above it using your active imagination. And that's going to begin to give you control of how you organize your memories, how you organize time. So a very funny thing happened when Tad James discovered timeline therapy. He put out his book, and not long afterwards, he got a letter from India, of all places. It was this, it was kind of beat up from its long journey, and it got to him, and he opened it up. He said, who's writing me from India? I don't have any friends in India at the moment. And he opened it up, and it was from an ashram. And somebody told him, you have discovered the Akashic record. Thank you. And that was it. That was the whole letter. So it was pretty interesting. Finding the timeline goes back to Grinder and Bandler. Those NLP hackers, are the original ones who found the timeline, modeling other therapists. And it was Tad James who really learned how to use it so effectively, creating timeline therapy. It happened accidentally, which is a funny story. So all of our impressions are stored as memories, and those memories are stored by the subconscious mind in a linear fashion. And that's how we make sense of our lives. We know that we did something in the past, we're going to do something in the future, and we're doing something now. And so those are 3 phases, and your subconscious organizes time in that way so that we can make sense of our lives. You think because you have all that memory that's you. Your personality is based on that. So imagine for a moment that you had no memory of yesterday or the year before or the year before that or forever, right? If you had no memory, how would you know who you are? You would have a much more difficult time understanding who you are. It would be almost impossible. And so your personality is formed by your past. You are informed from the story that precedes you, that lets you know who and what you are. And so very interestingly, when we create change using timeline therapy, or anytime we go back in our past and we resolve issues that we have with things that happened in the past, we resolve issues about ourselves, or we resolve issues about others, or we clean up our philosophy a little bit. Every time that we do that, we change ourselves. We actually immediately change our personality. And so people come back from timeline therapy. They're like, I feel lighter. I feel like I'm floating. What's going on? It's because they're feeling the weight, the burden of that memory has lifted off of them. And you can experience this a little bit if you try this exercise. Go back and touch on a memory. And every time you touch a memory, you will automatically change it. You cannot touch a memory without changing it a little bit. So if you go back and touch a memory and see how you remember it, and then go back the next day and touch that memory again, see how it changes a little bit. And so we think that we are these solid things. I am this, I am Forrest. But every time I touch the memory, that little box of who I am is changing. And that's true for all of us. Every time we make a new decision, we create a new understanding in ourselves, our whole personality begins to shift and change. And so isn't that fascinating? But the Samskaras, the impressions, are what is creating part of our future. So the second word is vasanas. And these are behavior tendencies. So because you have impressions, it creates a certain attitude that creates a certain tendency, behavioral tendency. And the third word is ashaya, which is disposition and intention. So whenever you create a decision about yourself or about the life or about your world, like I'm no good, it's a negative one, right? So anytime we create a decision like that, it creates an intention for our life. We carry that impression, we store it in the past, it becomes part of our personality, and everything that we do and say is influenced by that. Every moment we interpret the world through the lens of these decisions. And so if you go back and you get rid of that negative decision, it will completely change your view of life. That box will change. So let's look at this through the NLP model of communication. And they call it a model of communication because that's really the bulk of our lives, is communicating with others around us. But we're not only communicating with others around us, we're communicating with life itself. And so this is the communication between your mind and the world around you. So there was a gentleman that wrote a book, Flow, and what he was doing, he was measuring the amount of input that comes through your five senses. And it's actually an avalanche. It's an avalanche of information, and your brain cannot possibly process all of that because your brain, your conscious mind, is very, very slow. If you had a computer that ran like your conscious mind runs, you'd chuck it and throw it away immediately and go get a brand new computer because you couldn't stand it. And so that's how your conscious mind, it's a little bit slow, and that's very, very normal. The only way that the conscious mind, which is the very surface of your mind, the only way that it can operate is to completely wipe out massive amounts of information that is flooding through your five senses. So it's doing that constantly. It's deleting what it thinks is not absolutely necessary for you to survive. And so we're getting into jungle cat programming, right? If a jungle cat is coming to eat you, that's all you need to know. You don't need to know anything else from your inputs through the five senses. You just need to know that there's a predator coming to eat you. And so this is how your brain is organized. What is massively important in this moment? And then I'm going to delete everything else. And I mean everything. Those filters are delete, distort, and generalize. They take all of the information and they group it. That's the generalization. They distort it because of your past impressions, and they also delete it because it's not important in this moment. I just have to know what is purely and absolutely important for my survival. And so these filters are taking place all the time. And what I like to liken it to when I'm teaching NLP is that if you were to go up to Niagara Falls and you're like, I'm going to catch some of the stream of information flowing through a Niagara Falls, and you have your little Dixie cup, right? and you're coming on the boat and you put out your Dixie cup into the roaring massive waves of water coming down, and you take your little Dixie cup and then you put it into a little bucket next to you, and then you take your little Dixie cup and you get a tiny little bit of cup of water, it just fills up like that, and then you dump it out into the bucket you've got next to you. And this is how you're trying to collect the world around you. And all of this massive stream of information is passing you by constantly. And this is why, if you go back and you ask your brother or your sister or your mother or your father, and you say, do you remember that time when this thing happened? Tell me the story of that. Tell me the story of that thing that happened. Do you remember? And you'll go to your family and you'll have a family vacation, right? And you'll all get together. Well, not lately, but remember when we used to do that? We used to get together with our family. We used to tell stories. And your brother or your sister's story, they'll remember the same incident, but their story is completely different. And they will argue with you. You don't remember it correctly. No, you don't remember it correctly. How can that be? Well, you were actually living two separate lives. And your interpretation of those events was totally different. And so you'll find that a lot with your family and your friends. So you'll remember something, but you'll remember it completely differently. How is that possible? Because they went up to the Niagara Falls of the stream of information that's happening right now. And they put their little Dixie cup and they got this little cup. And that's what they collected from the incident. And you put your cup into the stream over here. It's slightly different. And you collected what happened in the flow of information that happened in that moment. And you collected something totally different. And that's how you're able to live in a separate world from the people around you. You're doing this all the time. We all are. We're all putting our little Dixie cup into the flow of massive amounts of information and coming up with a different story completely. Jill Taylor, in her book, describes what it was like to be abandoned from the left brain completely. And she was trying to process what the doctor would come in and tell her. And it would take her hours. Sometimes it would take all day for her to realize what the doctor was saying to her. So the doctor would come in the morning, and in the evening, she'd, oh my God, where's the doctor? I have to respond. This is important. It took her that long to process everything because the flow was so massive. She couldn't delete, distort, and generalize like she was supposed to with her left brain. And so she was constantly overwhelmed. And so our left brain is a very good thing, isn't it? It's helping us. It's showing us, it's narrowing us down into what is absolutely important in this moment. But it's going to delete and distort and generalize, and you have to know that if you're going to understand what's going on around you in your life. So here's a fun way to notice this in your own life. Have you ever thought about getting a new car? Like one time I was thinking about, I should really have a truck because I'm moving around and I've got all my stuff and I want to pack it, and it's hard when I don't have a truck. I should really have a truck. I don't need that many passenger seats, so maybe a truck would be good for me. And I'm thinking about that, right? And I walk out and boom, there's the truck in front of me driving down the road. I turn again, boom, there's another truck, the same exact truck that I was thinking about. Now, am I magically attracting all of those? Well, yes, I am. But the psychology behind it is that I'm not doing anything magical. It's just that I have put my Dixie cup into the information flow. And because my filter is now open and aware to that truck, now I'm seeing it everywhere. And of course, it's so easy in America, right? We've got all these trucks and cars and everybody has something different. And so if you open up yourself to a particular kind of car, you'll start seeing it everywhere you look. Even if you don't see it on the road, you might see it in a magazine. You might see it online. Something will pop up and, oh my God, there's my truck, there's my car that I was thinking about. And you can do this with almost anything that you're thinking about acquiring. You'll suddenly start to see it everywhere. And this is a reprogramming of your subconscious. Your subconscious filters for that moment have been programmed with truck. And so that's what you see wherever you go. Truck, there's a truck, there's a truck, because you've altered your filter. And so that it wasn't that the truck is magically appearing, it's that it was in the constant information flow, and now your cup has been organized to perceive that truck, right? So because of your impressions, because of your disposition, because of your tendencies, you are creating a certain future for yourself. So a lot of karma comes into opportunity, right? So how do some people get the opportunities and I don't? How do they get these opportunities and I don't? How does that work? Well, it must be my bad karma. Well, it's the karma that you are creating through your past actions. When you change your deep impressions, when you work on yourself, when you do Om Japa in the chakras, and you lighten your burden from the past, you release negative emotions, you release negative old decisions about who and what you are and what life is about. When you release those and let them go, you reorganize your filter. And so you put your cup into the stream, the abundant, magnificent stream of information flowing around us constantly. You put it into a new area. It's been reprogrammed, right? And you put it into the stream, and suddenly you start getting more of what you were looking for. You changed your karma because you changed your programming. And so now you're going to receive a different stream of information. And that's how one man can be very prosperous and abundant, and another man living right next to him can be poor. It has to do, if we're going to understand it, if we're going to try and understand it, we have to see it from the standpoint of programming, subconscious programming, subconscious filtering, delete, distort, and generalize. How can I change that? How can I lighten my burden? How can I see myself as more abundant so that when I put my cup into the stream, more flows into me correctly, what I'm looking for. And that's the problem generally when people approach changing themselves through affirmation, is they really don't believe it. So if you come with all of your negativity, and your negativity is one force, and then you come with your affirmation, and I'm going to break that up with my affirmation. Well, now you're fighting, you're creating conflict inside of yourself, and occasionally you will create two parts. And so now you'll have a part problem on top of your negative problem. So it's much better if you can go back and use the timeline therapy that I walk you through on this channel and clean out those negative tendencies, so that whatever it is that you want in your life, you are not, oh no, I couldn't possibly have that. So if you make your affirmation, if you make your decision, what it is that you're looking for in life, if you make it so big that you don't believe it, well, you're biting off more than you can chew. So shrink it down into a step. I'm going to reach this, but I want little steps here and little step here and a little step here. I want to chew it a little bit at a time and make it, that first step, make it believable, 1,000% believable. I can absolutely do that. I can see myself doing that. And maybe I have some doubts, maybe I have some negative feelings about that. That's what you clean up. You clean up those feelings. And what you're doing is that you've been split all this time, right? So I want this thing, but my negativity, my impressions from the past say that I probably are not going to get it because that's my experience, right? So now you are divided. You've got energy going this way and you've got energy going this way. And so this wonderful principle that Jeremy Brazelli would bring up to me over and over again is you've got to align yourself, right? That was martial arts. That was Aikibugai. You've got to align all of your energies if you want to accomplish something. And so you've got to bring these together into alignment. And that means cleaning up the past. And that means the timeline therapy walkthrough. You got to clean that up so that you are aligned. And you'll feel it. You'll feel it. It'll be this powerful thing inside of you. Oh my God, I can totally do that because I'm aligned. And you'll feel it down to your bones. And that's what you want. You want to be so aligned that you have absolutely no doubt that I can chew that step. And once you chew that step, then you chew the next step. And that's how you create your own future. But you didn't do it by beating an affirmation that you don't actually believe. You align yourself until you feel it. And then you chew it. And then it's yours. This is getting a little long, so I hope that you loved it. I hope it was a wonderful and dynamic introduction into understanding yourself and karma and how it's actually working, how it's all coming together. If you did, if you love this, be sure to hit that bell down below so I can see all of you next time.